kind of an interesting angle.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum tonight. This is the Monday, February 11, 2019, regular meeting of the Edina School Board. John, can you review the agenda for us quickly?
Yeah, after you approve minutes and hearings for members of our audience, you will go into the consent agenda to approve various things, agreements, some amendments to contracts, student travel. Our discussion tonight will be the proposal for the 1920 budget. We have policy review at 6:13, and then for action, Margo's going to ask for you to approve the capital requests, and then under information, you have enrollment and upcoming school board meetings.
Great. All right, thank you very much. The first agenda item is approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the January 28th, 2019 special and closed meeting, the January 28th regular meeting, and the February 7th work session?
So move.
Second.
Are there any changes to the minutes? All right, all those in favor of, oh, we have to do roll call.
Yep.
Sorry, Sarah. So we're doing a roll call to approve the January 28th special and closed meeting minutes, the January 28th regular meeting minutes, and the February 7th work session minutes.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, next we have hearings from members of the audience. Each month that we have our meetings, we do have opportunity for public input. Typically, our public input is limited to 3 minutes per person. We ask that if you have comments about individuals, that they not be raised tonight, that they should be brought separately to the superintendent's attention. I think we've got a number of speakers who are talking on the same topic. And so I'm not going to tell you not to speak, but if someone has said something, maybe you could just note that you agree with them. And there typically is not board discussion on the issues, although it looks like the topic for tonight is something that is before the board. So with that, the first person is Daniel Dula. Welcome.
Good evening, school board and administration. My name is Daniel Dulas. I am here to ask you to allow the Edina students to participate in Operation Wallacea expedition in Borneo with the high school science department. My daughter was a participant in last year's Operation Wallacea trip to Fiji. While no trip is risk-free, I believe that Operation Wallacea and the Edina High School took all the necessary precautions to ensure the health and safety of students going to Fiji, which really made the trip virtually worry-free. The on-site Operation Wallacea staff are vetted, diet and health requirements of students are accommodated, and policies and procedures are in place for each specific site, and these are updated annually. Parents and students receive complete and organized pre-trip information about vaccinations, possible illnesses and precautions, schedules, transportation, meals, activities, learning sessions, and what to expect from the time they landed in Fiji until the time they left. My daughter actually has a couple health issues. She's diagnosed with reactive airways disease and has an allergy to peanuts and tree nuts. Operation Wallacea's physicians required her to have an exercise spirometry test and approval by a local pulmonologist before they would sign off on her scuba diving. In addition, Lindsay Smaka and the Edina High School nursing staff took careful measures to ensure her safety, including providing her with a red medical bag for her EpiPen and a red ribbon to tie on her backpack to identify the pocket that contained the medical bag. Full-time medical trained staff were on site for the entire trip duration. A presentation about the trip was given to all students in their sophomore year science classes. Students had the opportunity to apply for one of the spots. With oversight from Lindsay Smaka, students helped to organize group fundraisers and had 14 months to raise funds for the trip through various fundraisers and through personal savings. I'm grateful to Edina High School for giving my daughter this unique opportunity to engage in hands-on learning experience with renowned researchers and to expand her worldview beyond Minnesota. The homestay opened her eyes to culture and traditions of Fiji, a philosophy of zero waste, conservation, and appreciation for the environment. In addition, the survey data the students collected in the forest and at the marine site were used by the researchers. These experiences play a significant role in developing my student into a globally responsible and responsive citizen. I'd like to see these types of travel-based learning experiences properly and thoroughly vetted continued under the leadership of dedicated teachers like Lindsay Smaka. I believe that my daughter's experience in Fiji and other opportunities at the high school helped her to stand out as a college applicant. In her acceptance package to a university where she applied early decision, the admission officer wrote, "I sincerely enjoyed reading your application and can't wait to see where your passion for field research takes you." Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next is Dick Houseman. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. He said it very eloquently, but I watched my daughter on this trip, and I've chaperoned a trip to Europe for the orchestra. And it was a wonderful experience, but what I saw them go through took it to another level. Going to Fiji, living with the native Fijians in a home built above where there's just an open room and they lived in their culture. And as he mentioned, when my daughter applied for schools, this was a major part of her essays to the different schools. And they were involved in discovering a new species of butterfly. How many trips can you have where you are involved in discovering a new species of a butterfly? It was, Mandy also, she became certified as a scuba diver, and she has asthma, and so as he mentioned, the safety protocols that they went through were tremendous. What this group did to make sure that the kids were safe and everything it made us feel very comfortable. I look at a trip like this, we live in Edina, we live in a fantastic school community, and it's an experience like this that takes it to an even greater level. And I just couldn't recommend enough that the kids have an experience like this because, again, it's different. They're living in a native. Ultimately, she decided to pursue her studies based on this because she saw the Fijians' culture being changed by climate change and such, and their cultures being changed. It made a significant impact on her life. That's what schools should do, and something like this gives them that opportunity. I hope you give them that opportunity for others as they come down because it's a fantastic program, and we felt very safe for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Mandy Osmond. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Mandy Osmond. I'm a senior at the Edina High School, and I had the honor of going on the trip to Fiji. I just remember in 5th grade, the staff signified, the theme of my graduation was All the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And Edina has always pursued giving back to the community and engaging in diverse communities, whether in the service project in 9th grade, the passion project in 10th grade, or my future May term in the senior year, which I'll be participating in Costa Rica to engage in the community, learn Spanish, and engage in the homestay in the small village. Also, it hurts my heart to feel that this opportunity might be stripped away and the chance of future generations will not get this chance to take the advantage of the amazing opportunities of becoming educated and immersed in a globalizing world. And as you as an elected school board members, you hold the responsibility of following through on these obligations and the motto of Edina of giving back and engaging communities, which we've seen in 9th grade, 10th grade, and future. My dad was previously up here, and he said what he said before was inspired me and my major to go into environmental studies. And I'm so grateful to go on this trip and be connected with all of my teachers. I have been blessed with the opportunity to engage in a more deep connections with my teachers, and I'm so blessed with that. And not only did I feel safe on the journey, because as my dad was saying, I had asthma, I have allergies, I have medical concerns, and I had to go through a very detailed process in order to go on this trip. I could not feel more safe. And not only did I feel safe, I felt at home. So I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Elena Eli. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm also a senior who went on the trip to Fiji, and I just wanted to say a few quick things. That when people ask me where I go to school and I say Edina, I'm very proud of that. I think that we're champions of appreciating diversity by embracing all people. and also for our district, teaching us the skills necessary to thrive in a rapidly changing global society, and also for pushing us to be lifelong learners. This is what you as school members vow to uphold upon being elected. These trips to Operation Valencia, or that Operation Valencia organizes, embodies all the things that the Edina School District teaches their students to embrace. These trips allow students to experience a different culture firsthand, which is the best way to learn, to understand, and to appreciate diversity. Applying our scientific knowledge in the field and learning how our academic interests translate into a work field is an invaluable experience that is irreplaceable. Furthermore, allowing students to pursue their passions past the boundaries of a classroom, past the boundaries of a district, a state, and even a country is essential in teaching us how we and our potential fit in a globalizing world. The Edina School District has always taken pride in their forward thinking and pushing down boundaries. Giving these trips as an opportunity to students is a way for Edina to continue to uphold this image. I and many others believe that it is your duty to offer these opportunities. This decision is about allowing your students to be limitless in a limitless world, and I hope that you consider this when making your decision.
Thank you very much. Sarah, did anyone else sign up? All right, that completes hearing from members of the audience. Next, we have the consent agenda. Are there items to remove from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to remove the biology to Borneo and the students to Korea for discussion with the board, please.
Okay, those will be removed from consent. That leaves the robotics as part of consent. Is there anything else to remove from consent agenda? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor, Sarah, we're back to you. Roll call for approval of the consent agenda.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Yes, I said, yeah.
Oh, there we go. He's there. All right, so that takes us then to the biology to Borneo. Can I get a motion to approve the biology to Borneo trip?
So moved.
Second.
And Ellen and Sarah, I think you had questions about Borneo? Or Ellen, or?
Yeah, the concern that I have about Borneo is not that it's a great trip, and I have talked with a number of people. I understand that it is a rewarding trip, and I would like to see the school district continue offering trips like this. But I just spent a lot of time talking about making budget adjustments, and I have to make sure that our resources are being put where they are most needed. And after that discussion, I would like to just have the board consider making sure that this trip can happen, but that the costs of this trip are being supported by the students that are going on the trip. And so it would just be fully funded by the students going on the trip. And so that would be my concern. And I'd like to just hear what the other board members feel about that right now.
So are you saying no district, at no district expense? And what would that mean?
Well, it would just mean that it would be, I would like them to continue to be able to go on these trips. I know the board is also going to go through a longer policy discussion on travel abroad. This one actually has more to do with our trip to Korea than it does to Borneo. But it applies to both of them. And I know that our residents are looking at how we are spending their money right now, and that if there are going to be district monies going toward an elective trip that only is experienced by a few, we have to make sure that, that we're paying attention to how our district is spending their resources. I don't know if maybe it does.
So are you talking about, I mean, for example, the students pay a certain fee that covers a fair amount of the cost, but we have an administrator who spends time organizing or assisting in the organization of these trips. Are you asking that there be an allocation of some of the administrative cost to the trip?
Right, and that, I don't know how much that is. I have no idea what that is. It could be not very much, or it could be substantial. On the Korea trip, I know that it may end up being a little bit more substantial. So and procedurally, I don't think that that would be a board decision to discuss how we would find out how we would cost out administrative fees. I would leave that to the administration, but and I think Borneo is actually a trip that, since Wallacea is so well organized, I don't believe that there would be very much administrative costs involved in addition to the trip that is being presented to us. So I don't think that it really affects Borneo very much. It may affect Korea a little bit more.
I think part of one of the reasons that we pulled this and that we've continued to have this discussion around field trips is that we've been talking about this policy for quite a while and trying to get a better gauge as to what trips are happening within the district, talking with our attorneys about safety and liability to the school district, and then overall equity of how these trips are offered and who can access them. In reviewing for our strategic planning session on Saturday, I was going through some old materials, having been on the board for a while, of work that we've done in the district. So our last strategic plan and all the documents that came with that. And one of the sessions that we had back in, like, it was 14 or 15, specifically talking about equity, our equity work, was around the field trip policy. And a lot of that had to do with equity and access. And so the discussion that this board has not concluded, even going back that far, is the fact that some of these trips become extremely expensive. And then, there's a limited amount of kids who can participate. So there's equity of access and equity of socioeconomic status and their ability to be a part of these opportunities. And so, whether right or wrong, these are issues that the board has not fully finished grappling with and come to a conclusion. So in our last Teaching and Learning Committee meeting on Tuesday, when both of these trips came forward, North Korea and the Borneo trip, again, we said, if we haven't finished our work, how are we moving forward again with these types of trips when we still haven't come to conclusion, which I don't think puts our staff in a fair position or our students, because we continue to dangle it out there and not have a conclusive discussion. So I know the board has asked for this work to be done. There's also a lot on our plates right now, I understand that, but this is something we need to discuss and finalize, and I don't want it to be done in a vacuum, which is kind of the way we're doing it right now. Obviously, these trips are deep and rich with incredible experiences. It's finding that balance between offering that experience, but also making sure that we're thinking about all of our kids in the district and the opportunities that are available to them as well. And that's what, as a board, I feel is essential to my responsibility. The diversity, the real-world experience, all of that is important, but we need to find our priorities and make sure that those opportunities are what is most important and can be helpful to all kids in the district. And so when this trip is at a cost of just under $5,000, that isn't realistic for many families. And although fundraising does appear to be a part of it, I think it's pretty tough probably to raise, close to the full amount of money. And even if we're looking at opportunities to scholarship some students, we also need to think about our organizations in the community that try to help with those things and how deep we want to tap those resources for these types of things. So I believe there's a bigger discussion to be had here. I understand the sense of urgency that was expressed to us in teaching and learning, that there were personnel coming in to discuss this trip with students towards the end of the month, and that's why we felt it didn't need to be on the agenda. But I am very cautious about approving this in the situation that I feel we're in. Same with North Korea.
South Korea. South Korea.
No, we would not be sending kids there. Same with South Korea. Again, it was another situation where we felt the train had gone down the track a bit. When we have students arriving here in April, we need host families for them. So again, we said, let's put this on the agenda and probably try to move it forward. But I believe it is a responsibility of this board, and with the help of the administration and the community, to come to some kind of a consensus and conclusion on this work, and that we think about where our resources should be and what opportunities we want our kids to have and how that impacts our community as a whole.
So the concerns are a little contradictory, though, because one of them is to increase the fees, and one of them is to decrease the
I
fees.
didn't say anything about
Equity and affordability, so trying to get the fees down,
Oh, down.
accessing these trips with a financial component.
Well-
So trying to get
But
the
I didn't
fees
say
more
raise the
affordable.
fees.
Okay.
Okay.
But trying to bring the fees to a lower number so more families can access this type of a trip versus trying to bring the fees to include more district costs than they do. For example, we employ people, and if during part of their workday they touch this trip, we would try to document that and account for that and keep track of how many hours was it? Was it 7? Was it 14? And we'll divide that by your annual salary and your 2,080 hours you work a year. It sounds frankly like more staff time to keep up with this, to keep track of what might be hundreds, maybe less, maybe more, probably not significantly more for any given trip. It just sounds like we're putting a big bureaucratic loop on something in a way we don't do with other things. We don't look at music programs or athletic programs and say, did anybody in the district spend time on this? Because if so, you got to tally that like we're consultants or lawyers doing the hourly billing per program and wrapping that up in student fees wherever we can find it. So I'm hesitant with this idea. I understand the situation we're in, but I think I'm looking for some judgment from John and the district staff to say, you know, what resources do I need? Where am I putting my staff's talent? And we heard from him tonight with the reduction talk, and from a board-generated position of let's make people tally their hours per program. Seems like it's an idea that comes from a good place, but it has consequences that perhaps we haven't considered. And same thing with the equity. I think we were getting somewhere in another conversation where we said, well, let's focus perhaps on maximizing maybe over a number of years fundraising towards a trip, maybe a particular trip. For example, and this was an example that came up before, the 8th grade DC trip, trying to make sure that there's at least one trip that we put our foot down and say we're going to do everything we can to get as many as we can, with the goal being everybody, which is different from saying we forbid another trip. We've talked about some ideas about cycling trips in terms of affordability, maybe more local, regional, national, international. We didn't mention all those tiers, but that's sort of a cycle. And I think this is something that went to policy committee, and we started the conversation. We had a chance for the district to go back and consult among themselves and bring it back to committee. So that's kind of where it is. We never said that the trips and the planning and everything should stop while this was in committee. And so I'm not at all surprised to see it keep coming. I think there was sort of an implication that this was a little, I don't know, like unexpected that these trips continue to get some planning done and some foresight. I think we'd expect that sort of thing. So I just want to
I
put all
think
that
that
context
may
out
come
there,
up
that there's
teaching.
validity to the concerns, but there's complications. There are some other ideas on the table, and it's in a process, albeit maybe a little slower than we would have thought in November or so, but that's where it is.
So what I think, for me, what Amir's comments highlight for me is our need to have a broader conversation, which, because I think I know you've been saying that, but your comments are valid and good. I think your comments are valid and good. But we have not had a chance as a board to have a broader conversation about this. And my concern is that I do not want really great opportunities for our students to get caught in the middle by the fact that we have not had a chance to have a conversation. And it's not students or teachers' fault that are trying to do these opportunities, that we have not had a fact to, or that we haven't had time to vet this fully. And I understand that's the part that frustrates me, and I know it frustrates you that we haven't had a time to have these conversations, but I would hate to see kids not be able to have an opportunity because we have a board because of a time issue. That just, to me, is not the right thing to do.
So I have a quick question, which is both the Korea and the Borneo trip recommend approval. The Korea trip says that this has been approved by the high school administration. The Borneo trip doesn't say that, and I don't know if he just ran out of typing. So has the Borneo trip been approved by high school administration?
Susan, can you answer that for us?
Yes, and I apologize that that was not noted on the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I have another question, more logistics, if these trips are approved. The up to 20 students on both trips, if you have more than 20 students interested, how will you choose which students can participate?
Thank you for your question. I can't speak specifically to the process with the Borneo selection of students, but I can speak to how we have selected students in the past when there's a limit to the number of students who can participate, and that protocol will be used again for the Korea experience. So we open the opportunity for all students who are eligible. In this case, it would be current 9th grade students to the Korea experience. There is an application process. It's a 4-question application the students would complete. Prior to completing the application, they are given all of the questions and the rubric that we would use to score it. The applicants, the applications are read blind by a team of people individually and scored, and then the students are ranked based on their application. We then do some additional vetting prior to announcing the students to ensure that if there are any concerns about the students' participation with administration, that we have an opportunity to talk about those with the student and their family. So we have not excluded any students because of any issues that have popped up. We're also ensuring that we can meet the medical or special education needs of students in that process as well. And again, we have not excluded any students in that process because of those concerns.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A couple thoughts I have. First off, it's very hard to stand in the way of such an excellent educational opportunity for the kids. It's life-changing. It helps many of them determine what they want to major in, what they want their careers to be in. They get a much broader sense of the world and where the United States fits into the context of the world, so that's fantastic. We do have some considerations. The Star Tribune had a cover story article in one of the sections yesterday about some college kids dying on some of these foreign trips, and others encountering serious health issues. So, Susan, you have come to policy before and talked to us about this, and you're doing a lot to make sure that that doesn't happen. You've won my confidence in terms of that. We do have to be very mindful of the safety considerations. For the benefit of the public and those watching, we just spent an hour talking about the budget cuts, and they're pretty strong, and we're having to cut down pretty close in some things. And it sounds like, Ellen, what you're talking about is having this trip. Your concern is to have it self-finance itself completely in terms of the administrative load. And Amir's talking about the difficulty of actually getting that. We are in flight, and it's a little bit hard perhaps to do this right now, but to Erica's point, Sarah's, we probably have to quit kicking the can down the road and maybe set up a meeting where we talk for an hour about this express expressly. Because, the equity issue, it's hard to completely explain why we're funding staff time for this when we're cutting so much. I don't want to stand in the way of the trip, So, Ellen, I think you make a good point, and I think I'd be interested to hear what effort would be involved in doing some cost accounting on that. I can't imagine it being too tough, just rough estimates.
Right. And the other point is that there are additional, it's not just in-house administration for all these trips. For Korea, maybe, I don't know, Susan, do you want to explain, there's other costs involved, right? I just don't want these costs to come out to the public after the board approves this trip.
So if I may ask, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking for, additional costs to the student?
No, she's talking about costs that are not covered by the participants in the program. So what costs would the district incur that are not currently planned to be funded by the students?
So the cost that I would anticipate, and that budget would be Mr. Beaton's budget, the principal of the high school's budget, would be for when our guest students are here. There are 20 students and 3 or 4 teachers. It would be we have probably 2 during the day field trips. One of them is to the MIA, so there's no admission fee, so it would be transportation on that day. And there would be a welcome celebration, and we are looking for a vendor or a community partner to help support that, and that welcome celebration. There would be lunch during the school day for 10 school days. And those are the costs that we anticipate at this time.
No, I'm talking about the trip abroad in October. That's what this is about, isn't it?
So the cost there would be incurred, again, there's a student fee. We anticipate it's $2,500. That is the price we've been given by the travel vendor we are working with. And so we have an anticipated cost of $2,500 per student. There would be no additional cost to the district for the chaperone who would be 2 chaperones who would be traveling with our students.
Okay, so I understood that Principal Beaton was going to be flying to Korea before this trip to vet the trip. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly. Is that going to be absorbed, that cost going to be absorbed by the district?
So that is happening in March per policy. When we have students in a homestay situation, we need to have the venue or venues vetted. So Mr. Beaton will be traveling from Bangkok to Seoul to do that immediately following spring break. So he will be making that transition. He will do that, and those costs will be included in the fees that we are charging.
Okay, I wanted that to be clear and on the record. That was one of my concerns about this. When the district is in the process of a massive budget alignment, it's important that these types of fees and this type of activity is transparent. So that's one of the main reasons that I pulled this. And I want to just say I have spoken with Lindsay, and I think that the Borneo trip sounds like an incredible opportunity. I think that I have no reservation with that. It is just as we move forward, the board really does need to sort out student safety, which is my biggest concern in all of this is student safety. I'm not concerned about this trip, the Borneo trip. But we really do have to make sure that we are doing all we can to make sure that our students are safe. And to a much lesser degree, but still quite important, that the school's liabilities are managed very responsibly. So this is why I wanted to have this discussion, And so now that I understand that in Korea, the district is going to absorb those costs, I have no problems in approving. Students are, sorry, the students are going to absorb those costs. I have no problems approving these 2 trips at this moment.
So I just want to make a couple comments. One, of course, given what our current policy is, and that these are in compliance with the policy, and this is what the district direction has been to date, I am in favor of these particular trips. Having said that, going forward, I think that when we have a trip like Borneo, which has 2 aspects as I see it, there's sort of the life-changing aspect that people talk about, and then just the basic educational component to it. I would like the board to say, if we're going to schedule an international trip that has certain educational components, that we request or require that there be a similar educational trip available for people at a much lower cost, so that we're not excluding people. And I would also want us to consider being more aggressive on making the expensive trips available to a broader group of students. And I don't mean numbers, I mean for those who cannot afford a $4,500 price tag. And those are just things that I want people to start to think about, which have already been mentioned, but for our work session, when we do get into, I think it's policy 538. And I do anticipate that the board will get further into that policy sometime in the next 6 weeks. So any other comments?
Yeah, I think the key is that we need to have the discussion, and that, of course, you know, the trips are wonderful, whether we're talking music, science, all of the different things that are happening. It's us getting our heads wrapped around it and making a consistent decision across the board for all kids and all trips. And we just need to do the work.
All right, we will go to a roll call, and this is to approve the trip to Borneo.
We're doing them one at a time.
That was the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. Can I get a motion to approve the trip to Korea? We're going to call it South Korea.
So moved.
Any further discussion? I think we've kind of covered this in conjunction with Borneo. If not, we'll do a roll call on the motion to approve the trip to South Korea.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Next, we are going on to discussion item. First discussion item is the budget alignment plan. And we actually just had a 1-hour work session on this. And I also believe that we will have a public hearing on this. But maybe, Margo, you can fill us in with some broad strokes and give us the timing of the public hearing. Wherever you want.
Good evening, Chair Wallen Friedman, Superintendent Schultz, and School Board. Yes, we did discuss the draft or the initial discussion of the 1920 budget alignment plan in the board work session. And it's a culmination of months of work. I'm happy to report with the brainstorming and everything that occurred. We have some creative, I would say, creative ideas of where people really dug in hard to think of ways to reduce that are not a direct impact to students, and minimizing that, because that's what we always strive for. It is a difficult challenge, but people rose to the challenge. And while maintaining that by June 30th, 2020, we will be at a 6% fund balance. And in this district, people balance the student needs along with the fiscal position very, very well. This plan is the remaining reductions needed after the reductions in December that were approved at the secondary level. And so in total, the combined of all of it is about 2.2 million, but the remaining amount is just under 1.4 million. This is the first report of sorts or discussion, and then we'll have a listening session on March 4th, and then request approval from you as a board at the March 11th meeting. We also will have Finance and Facilities Committee, I believe, it's February 25th, I believe, somewhere at the end of February. And so they will review it as well, and along with the public listening session. So just to quickly summarize, I won't go line by line through the reductions. We do have one area where we're, because of increased technology levy due to our overall district property wealth, we are able to transfer some dollars for staff that the work that they do specifically qualifies under the technology coding and statute. We're able to make budget transfer of general fund dollars into the technology levy. Student support services, one of the key areas there is that we're bringing a program in-house from 287, and which will provide more in-house service to those students and also create a district savings. The remainder, we have a combination of, in another area in teaching and learning, using the Title II grant in a different way, and charging some math and reading TOSAs there, a portion of their time, not all of it. And so just a variety, the elementaries are doing something with substitutes and also their extra pay stipends. So a variety of reductions, and there's also one revenue generation. As we are I updated the enrollment projections for, as of actually last week. Second semester has brought in a few more students, and so I've projected some of those to be ongoing into 1920, so we were able to realize some revenue there. So the list of reductions, the details are in your board packet. We talked about them at the work session. We had lead team members there to provide, and principals to provide more background for you. And so we just answer any questions you have at this time, and if you have any questions about the process and what comes next.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a quick question. Do you anticipate any of these cuts affecting our average teacher to student class ratios that we've seen across secondary and primary?
So the secondary, as they proposed some of their ratios, so it will not affect the board guidelines in terms of what that is. We have not come back and made a recommendation for you to increase those. The high school in particular is well under those.
Right.
So their average may increase, but not above the board policy level.
Okay, thank you.
Margo, the public will be interested to know whether this has any impact on fifth grade music. Could you speak to that?
There is not a recommendation for fifth grade music in this list.
Okay, thanks.
The public would also like to know whether it will impact gifted and talented in the elementary schools.
There's not gifted and talented listed in recommended. The details are there. This whole report is
it's
online.
the shifting from the tier 2, tier 1, tier 2 programs. It's in the background packet.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I don't know what you're asking.
So there is no recommendation to reduce the FTE allocations towards gifted and talented, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions? So we'll look at this again next month, and then we have the listening session March 4th.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Margo. And next we have policy review, policy 613.
Very good. Yeah, this is Relatively small change. We're talking about graduation credits. We still have the same expectation, but we used to specify in policy that these were credits earned during grades 9 through 12, and in some cases 10 through 12. But because there's a proposal working its way through teaching and learning that has to do with getting recognition for advanced math achievements that happened in middle school, but say, for example, in geometry or another course, getting that on a transcript, the grade you got, the class you had it in, on your transcript, having those credits count towards the credits you need to graduate. So we removed language that referred to grades that these things were earned in, and simply have a clause that says you need these credits on your high school transcript. And the process to move from the, say, the middle school course to get it recognized in your high school transcript will be specified, and there'll be a form and a procedure that the administration will oversee.
So all we're really clarifying is we're not limiting graduation credits to be specified as 912, because there will be a procedure to allow parents and students to apply for something they may have earned in 8th grade that really counts as a high school class.
Exactly. It's an opt-in opportunity.
It's an opt-in option. Thank you. Looks
All
good.
right. I think we did that before, actually, or we as a practice, even though it may not have been in the policy.
So like, all the better now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Next, we're moving to action items. Can I get a motion to approve the 2019-20 capital project requests?
Second.
And Margo, we went through these last month. Are there any changes to these?
There are no changes from last meeting. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them. Other than that, I would ask for your approval.
Any questions? Again, we did see this last month. All right. Can we get a roll call to approve the 2019-20 capital project requests?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. All right. We're moving. Information next. So are there any committee updates? There are none on finance because we haven't had a finance meeting since the last board meeting. It's February 25th. I checked my calendar.
We did talk in teaching and learning a little bit about middle school, and just talked about hopefully having some time as we go forward with our strategic plan to talk about some of the alignment issues between the two schools in terms of courses offered, the way they're offered, and potentially looking just at the general overall schedule in the two middle schools and how they have differences, and looking at best practices. And I know middle school's kind of been, had to take a little bit of a back burner at times just due to all the large changes in the district, whether at 912 or in other areas. So it was just a great discussion with some of our middle school leadership to hopefully initiate that going down the road once we have that strategic plan finalized.
Anything else?
I don't have a committee update, and I know the district sent this out on Facebook. I wanted to publicly recognize our school bus drivers who have gotten our kids home to and from school safely in this bizarre winter weather we've been having. So thank you, school bus drivers, and all our teachers and staff and everyone who have really gotten our kids educated these past few weeks, because I really don't want my kids home any more days of school. So thank you all.
All right. Ellen, did you have something?
Actually, I was going to announce, and I can't remember if I announced it already, but the Association of Metropolitan School Districts is having a day at the Capitol on February 21st. It's at 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. At the State Office Building, room 400S. And I encourage anyone who is interested in advocating for our public schools to show up, and we'll be having meetings with our legislators or other decision makers that have to do with public schools, funding, and policy. And so you can look for more information at www.amsd.org. Day at the Capitol. Thank you.
Great. Anything else? We've completed our agenda. Is there any objection to adjourning? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.